What's up everyone?
What's up everyone? Hello everyone. Hey guys, welcome to today's video. I'm Daniel.
I'm here in Iowa,
Gold Coast Casino.
I'm ready to give you guys another vlog.
Hello everybody. So I am here at Bowlers Connection Pro Shop in Iowa, and Hank Boomershine over at Storm, shout out to him. He helped me out with 2 balls to do a really cool test with, and that's what this video is going to be about. So I am going to, this is going to be the biggest project that I've ever done for my channel before, and if you want to see more like this, be sure to subscribe below. To start off, I'm going to be testing the differences between asymmetric and symmetric cores and just kind of show the results that I get through that. So every good test has a hypothesis, right? Well, my hypothesis is that I think that the asymmetric cores is going to be smoother, roll a little earlier, and be more smooth motion down lane, have less of a response to their friction down lane. On the other hand, the symmetric ball is going to go a little bit longer, be a little bit cleaner, and save more energy for the back end, and get it to have more, pop down lane, as they might say. So here are the 2 balls. We got an Idle Cosmos and we got a Reality. So these 2 balls, as you can see, they're both 15-3. They have very similar top weights, and pin to CG distances are both 3 to 3.5. The Idle Cosmos has 2.4 ounces of top, and the Reality has 2.62 of top, and so they're super close. They're not absolutely perfect, but you're not going to have every single one be perfect in a test anyways. So I want to kind of show more of what the real world might be for a consumer, like a lot of you are, that walk into a pro shop and want to get this ball, just to see real world examples of that as well. So without further ado, I'm going to get some holes in these. The layout's going to be the exact same on both. We're going to do a 45 by 4.5 by 45, just to kind of give an example of a very common layout. It's decently strong but not super strong. It's like a very medium layout. So the 45-degree first angle obviously is not really going to matter on the Idle Cosmos, but it's going to matter a lot on the Reality because it's asymmetric. It has that intermediate differential. Also, if you're wondering why I chose these 2 balls specifically, the reason is because they have the exact same RG and the exact same differential. The RG is 249 and the differential is 052 on both of these balls. The intermediate mass bias or intermediate differential, on the Reality is 018. So that's the only difference in the cores other than the shape. So with that information all put in place, I'm going to get some holes in these, and tomorrow I'm going to be throwing them and walk you guys through 3 different oil patterns. We're going to have a house shot, and we're going to have Statue of Liberty, and we're going to have Taj Mahal. And we're going to try it out. I'm going to throw it on Specto, see how it does, see how each one goes, and kind of show the differences. Also, before I put holes in them, I'm going to be surfacing them both with a brand new pad each, to 1,000 grit, and then throw it at 1,000, and then put it at 2,000 and 3,000. We're just going to do it by those, and I'm going to show the differences that each one makes based on the surface as well, and show you how much that surface actually matters too in this video. So you're going to kind of get a 2-for-1 here, kill 2 birds with 1 stone, talking about the difference in asymmetric and symmetric cores and surface changes too. So guys, stay tuned. Be sure to leave a like, because I'm going to put a lot of effort into this video for you guys. Thank you, and I'll see you shortly. Also, be sure to subscribe for an upcoming video with a lot of urethane in it. I'll just leave that there. I don't want to spoil it too much for you, but a lot of urethane coming soon.
Everything about you. Everything about you. body. Everything about it. Everything about it. Everything about it.
So, welcome everyone. Today we're going to start by throwing both balls on the Statue of Liberty pattern. It's our long pattern for today. Our short pattern, as you'll see in a bit, is going to be Taj Mahal. And then we're going to try it on a house shot too. This is a completely fresh pattern. I've thrown 3 shots on each lane just about with my Zen just to get warmed up. I have not thrown a single shot with either ball yet. They're both at 1,000 grit, as you saw previously, and that was with both brand new pads on each ball, 2 brand new 1,000 grit pads, and then we're going to do it with 2,000 and 3,000. We'll get started with the shots here on Statue of Liberty, and I'll show the differences there between the two. Okay, so to start, I was looking at second arrow. I want to explain, I'm going to be looking at second arrow for probably 3 or 4 shots with each. That was the reality. Hit 9.6, saw it kind of rolled early in the oil. I remember we're on a long pattern, so there's quite a bit of oil out there. You know, it kind of bled off at the end in flat 10. So let's see what the idle does. So I did miss that one right off my hand, so we're going to give it another go with the idle, wipe off the oil, and give it a shot, try and hit 10. That was 7.7, but already I could see that it wanted to go down the lane more before it started that hook phase. So let's give it a shot on 10 and see what it does. So Specto said that was 9.1 at the arrows, and I could definitely see a difference there of when it picked up later, had a little more energy going through the pins, and it rang a 10 pin rather than flat 10. So that's something that I'm kind of seeing as a clear difference between the two for right now. But let's go ahead and see you know, the rest. I'm going to move a little bit left. I'm going to look at 12 now, throw some shots there, and kind of just keep collecting data using Specto with each ball to try and figure out you know, the differences. So something I'll note too that I did do those last 2 shots. The reality was right up 11, and the idle Cosmos was about 9 off my hand. I missed a little right still, but I did send it a little bit right, and as you saw there, it picked up and actually tried to hook into the pins. Whereas the reality, yes, it hooked, but very smooth and not as aggressive on the back end as the idle Cosmos. So let's keep going. So, the reality, I threw right up 10 that shot in the idle Cosmos. I hit 11 and basically threw it right up 11, according to Specto. So, what I'm seeing out of both of these is still the same thing. It's exactly what I guess I would say I expected, which is good, but they are both at 1,000 grit right now. I'm going to go over to the other lane, Taj Mahal, throw some shots over there and see if I can spot the differences there too. So since this is a shorter pattern, I'm starting right up 5, the first arrow from the right. And I started with the reality there, as you can see, very smooth, very controllable. It's got that larger core in it too, so it is going to be a little rollier, as you would expect. and so that appears to be exactly what it's doing, so that's good. Now, that one went Brooklyn, as you saw there. I threw right up 5, you know, and we've got spec'd on this, so I'll check that in just a second. But as you see there, the reaction was a lot more violent down lane, wasn't as smooth, and it hooked more overall, which is something that I kind of expected, just kind of through what I've seen through symmetric and asymmetric balls before, kind of seeing like more of an overall motion out of something symmetric, where it conserves that energy more for down lane. So let me check the specto real quick. Now the interesting thing with specto, and I'll break this down in just a bit and go over this when I get home with you guys on my computer, but basically the difference between the two shots, I find it interesting because it says that the reality hooked at 23 feet, whereas the idle cosmos hooked at 24, and they were considerably close. I mean, they were both right at like 3.6, 3.7, I think it was, at the arrows, and then went 7 and 8 respectively down lane, just because the idle hooked overall just a little bit more. So that's interesting. So let's try moving left now. So I'm going to look at 10 at the arrows and try to send it to the gutter. So you see the reality there, didn't quite want to hook up, it missed the head pin, left to wash out. So let's see what the idle cosmos does. I didn't get it as far right down lane. I'm going to look at the specto here in just a second. But I can already tell that that Cosmos wants to go at the end of the pattern a little bit more than the reality does, whereas the reality is a little more forward at the end of the pattern, which makes sense. I'm going to give the idle Cosmos one more shot on that same line and see if I can try to recreate what the reality did. So that shot with the idle Cosmos right there was a good sign because it when I sent it right, it really wanted to hook back, almost struck, just left a 4 pin there as you can see. And the interesting thing is that both the balls hooked at the exact same distance, 37 feet. The reality was still just a hair right of where the idle Cosmos was down lane, and I'll show you guys that in a bit. But it's interesting because they both went the same amount of feet before they hooked. So now I'm going to move in left and try and still send it right, but from a bit further left, probably like 13, 14 of the arrows. So that shot with the reality looked really good. Let's see what Specto has to say. So that shot with reality was 11 at the arrows and 5 down lane at the break point, and it started hooking at exactly 40 feet. So let's see what the idle Cosmos does, trying to recreate that. No, it's not quite what I expected. I didn't expect the flat 10. I'm going to take a look at the Specto and see what the difference was. So the shot with the reality was 11-5, and the shot with the idle Cosmos was also 11-5. They were within like 0.1 or 0.2 of a board, which is really good accuracy. But the difference is where they hooked. So the reality still hooked earlier. It hooked at 40 feet, and the idle Cosmos hooked at 41. So that slight bit of difference I can really kind of tell. So now we're gonna put 2,000 grit on these balls with a fresh pad each, and I'll come back out. Alright, so we've got a fresh 2000 grid on our Reality and Idle Cosmos. I'm going to start on Statue of Liberty again and then go over to Taj Mahal. Same thing, playing up the second arrow and then going from there. Difference in surface too is going to make the balls go a little bit longer before they start to hook. So let's take a look at what the idle does. So the only difference between the two shots was the Reality was up 8 and the Idle Cosmos was up 9. But as you saw there, had a flat 10 with the Reality and had a strike. Ball went through the pins a lot better with the Idle Cosmos. So now let's move a little bit left and hit 12 and see what it does. So that one hit 9 at the arrows and hit 8 down lane at the break point. It's interesting just because I really like that shot. I thought it was going to go through the pins a lot better. But still, I mean, you can tell that the Reality is just a little more lazy right now. So let's see if the Idle Cosmos is the opposite. So that one was right up 9 again, and you can tell the difference. I mean, it's getting out the 10 pin. Even when it's not, it's ringing around it, like sending a 6 pin around the 10 with a little bit more energy through the pins. And I mean, that one was great. It went through the pins very well and was able to get the 10 out. So now let's head over to the other pattern, Taj Mahal, and see how they do with 2000 grit. So once again, we're going to start by going up 5 with the Reality and then try the same line with the Idle Cosmos and see the difference. So according to Specto, that shot with the Reality hooked at 24 feet, and I hit 4 at the arrows and 5 down lane just because it started to hook before the end of the pattern. So let's see the difference in the Idle Cosmos. So, to my surprise, the Idle actually hooked 1 foot earlier. I did hit 3 at the arrows, so board right with from where the Reality was. But it did hook a little bit earlier, and I find that interesting. But let's throw another shot. Move left here, look at second arrow, send it right like we did earlier. Try it with each balls. That one was just a touch right off my hand. I hit 7 to 2, but you can tell that it was definitely forward off the end of the pattern. Specto says that it entered the roll phase and rolled at 33 feet. The break point was at 33 feet for that shot. So now let's see what the difference is in the Idle Cosmos. So I threw that shot with the Idle, 8 to 5. It says 36 feet was the break point distance. I'm going to try and throw one more shot and get a little more right off my hand and see, because that one definitely wanted to hook on the back end, but I think it's because it wasn't as far right as the Reality. So let's take a look. So, as we saw earlier with the Reality 2 shots ago, you know, it left that light mixer 7 because it just didn't quite have the energy to go through the pins because it was rolling a little too forward off the end of the pattern. Well, that shot with the Idle Cosmos, so both of them were 7 to 2. You know, the Reality was like 7.2 to 2.7 or something like that, and the Cosmos was exactly 7 to 2. And you can tell the difference right there. It makes more shape off the back end. It hooks a little bit harder at the back end, and it's going through the pins way better than the Reality is right now, really on either pattern, honestly, because where you're leaving those light mixer 7s or those flat 10s, you know, is where the Idle Cosmos is coming into play because it's got more energy off the back end, which I think is mostly due to the core. Simply, you know, you could argue that it has to do with the pearl additive that is in the Idle Cosmos, but the difference is that I'm putting the exact same surface on both of these balls with brand new pads, surfacing pads, to make sure that there's no difference, you know, between the two. simply just because I want to try and control as much as I can for this test. So I'm going to try one more shot with each ball, move even further left and try and swing it right like we did earlier, and then we'll go to 3,000. So even that flat 10s, and I definitely tried to loop the lane a little bit extra there on purpose. But even that shot flat 10 with the reality, which kind of notes that it really is going forward off the end of the pattern. Every single time where the reality is flat 10ing or light mixer 7, the idle Cosmos is just driving through the pins so much better. To note the differences, that shot was 11-5 with the idle, and it hooked 1 foot later again. So you can tell that it is just getting that touch later down the lane on both patterns, where it's at least getting just 1 foot later. And so I think that that highlights a key difference between the two. Because of that 1 foot of difference, the idle is able to come off the pattern a little sharper, go through the pins a little bit better than the reality right now. I'm going to go ahead and put these at 3,000 grit each with a brand new pad each, and then repeat the same test one more time and give you guys the results. So now we're at 3,000 grit, each sanded with a fresh pad. So we're going to start by throwing the reality again right up 10, then we're going to throw the idle Cosmos right up 10, move to 12, and then I'm going to throw in a bonus shot. Now that we're at 3,000, which is just a little shinier grit, now both balls should hopefully be able to get down the lane just a little bit more than they were. So then I'm going to throw in a bonus and try and fade the ball in this longer pattern here, Statue of Liberty. So let's see what happens. Well, that shot was right up the 8 board, and you saw what happened. I mean, I stoned an 8 pin there. Really good shot. Looked like the ball was going through the pins a lot better, and then just didn't want to carry. So we're going to try the idle Cosmos now. Same thing. So that shot was 2 boards right. It was up the 6th board with the idle. You can tell the ball definitely went longer. I mean, it was 36 feet. The one with the reality was 24 feet. I will say you'll be weary of that first shot with a fresh surface cover, just because it'll hook a little bit earlier most of the time. But I will say, since I missed that ride, I think it hit a bump of oil there. So we're going to try and throw another shot here with the idle. So that shot there with the idle Cosmos was right up the 8 board, and it hooked in right to pocket, went through the pins great again. I really like how that rolled. So now we're going to try and bump way left, try a fade shot on this longer pattern and see how it goes. So, as I kind of was hoping and expected, the reality from deep, I mean that was 17 to 12 or 13 almost, and it looked really good. Went through the pins great. And the only reason that I think that looked good was because it hooked early enough so that it really rolled into the pins a little bit better. Because in Asym, typically, at least in my experience, and that's why I'm testing this, the Asym balls typically roll better in a lot of oil because they're able to start that roll phase sooner than symmetric balls. That's what I believe, that's my experience, but we're going to try it here and see what the data actually shows with the idle Cosmos. So that shot with the idle Cosmos was 15 to 11. Just a hair right down lane of where the reality was, and I mean you can tell it picked up and went. Now the interesting key note is that it actually hooked a foot sooner than the reality, which I did not expect. My expectation was that the Cosmos would go longer, wait in the oil to hook, and then hook towards the very end and maybe ring a 10 pin. That's not the case. So I'm going to throw one more shot from that line with each ball and see if I can recreate those results and figure out what's going on. So that shot there was 14 to 11 and hooked at 46 feet. So I'm going to try and recreate that with the other ball. I missed that one right a little bit off my hand, 14 to 9, hooked at 47 feet, so 1 foot later than the reality. But I want to retry that and see if I can recreate it again. So that shot with the Idle Cosmos went 47 feet before it started to hook, so 1 foot later than the reality still. It was a much better shot, hit like 15 to 11, and I mean it looked, you know, like it really labored down lane, which is what I was actually kind of expecting it to do beforehand. So I'm not sure exactly what happened during that one shot, but I cannot ignore it because it's part of the results. So as we go over that in just a bit, then I will dive into that a little bit more. Alright, so now we're back over to Taj Mahal, and we're going to throw some shots over here, try and move a little bit more left than I have in the past. You know, a couple of tries with the other grits, but we're still at 3,000, so let's try and see what we can do. That one with the reality did go 21 feet hooked and went Brooklyn. So now we're going to try the Idle Cosmos, going right up 5 again with that same line. So that one was the 3 board at the arrows and the 4 board down lane, so about a board right of where that the reality was. And not surprisingly, it did go 1 foot longer than the reality did before it hooked. So now I'm going to move left, hit 10, just like I have in the previous test, and see what each one does. Definitely think you can tell the surface is starting to play a part in this too. At 3,000 grit, I could definitely tell that reality just went, you know, longer than it has in the past couple tests, and it really wanted to kind of dive at the end in a smooth fashion. So let's see what the Idle does. So both shots were relatively similar. The Idle Cosmos once again hooked 1 foot later at 22 feet as compared to the reality that hooked at 21. And just the difference in ball motion that you can actually see in the videos. I mean, it's incredible to see. The reality is really trying to go forward at the end of the pattern, and the Idle is really trying to curve, like be a more violent motion at the end. You know, where it's coming off of the end of the pattern, where it's encountering friction. And so I do want to say that it appears that the Symmetric core is trying to be a little more aggressive on the back end, which does make sense, because my whole hypothesis, once again, just to restate that, is that the asymmetric core, the reality, will be smoother and roll earlier than the symmetric core, which is the Idle Cosmos. So now let's move a little bit further left, try to swing the lane, and see what they do. So that shot was 13 to 7 and hooked at 41 feet. Let's see what the Idle does. And that shot hooked at 40 feet as well, but it was a little bit right, a couple boards right down lane of where the reality was. And I mean, you can see it gets packed to pocket so much better, and it rang that 10 pin, so it's not as lazy down lane as the reality is. So that's all for the testing portion of this. I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna show you guys the actual data behind it with Specto and walk through all of that.
Alright, so I know that this is a rather long video. I actually just finished editing all of the other parts to it. So I'm going to make this very brief and just kind of show you guys the data that we collected on the lanes. So just to kind of go over it, I just want to point out a couple things of interest. You're going to see some shots on here that you didn't see in the video just simply because I am human and I throw bad shots. And so there are some shots that, would have really thrown off the data in the video if I had shown you those, and also would make it an extremely long video. So I took some out purposely that were very bad shots because I tried to get my target as close as possible on every shot. So just to kind of point out a couple things, I want to point out this breakpoint distance. So you can see it varies quite a bit here across the board, but I want to point out that there are numbers that are relatively close. We have a 37 and a 38 back to back here. Now, those are two shots. The 37 was the reality. The 38 was the idle cosmos. And then there are shots like here, the 40 and 40. That was one of my very last shots that you saw in the video. That there is both balls, and they both rolled at 40 feet. And as you can see, I mean, one of them was further right down lane, and I said that in the video. But we have one at 41 versus the 40, and we have some at 24, a 23 in there, which would have been the reality, and the idle cosmos would have been the 24. What I just want to point out is this is what I was talking about in the video when I was discussing how that the reality was consistently rolling 1 foot earlier than the idle cosmos. And the reasoning that I believe that is because they were both at the same surface, they both got same top weight almost. They've both got the same amount of ounces, the same layout. You can, do whatever, say whatever you want about what they have the same. But I want to point out the biggest key difference, obviously, is in the core. The asymmetric part of the core in the reality versus the symmetric core that's in the idle cosmos. And I believe that based on the data, based on throwing both balls at the same surface with brand new pads over and over and over again on these patterns and trying them out, I honestly believe that the asymmetric core did roll earlier. Now, I also want to show you something that comes from the manufacturer website. So, I want to go over what the manufacturer websites between Storm and Motive have to say about the difference between asymmetric and symmetric balls. So I'm just going to read it here, the highlighted bit. On Storm's website, this is from the Storm news article, bowlers who favor the use of an asymmetric core need a little help, extra help curving the ball. These balls rev up fast and finish strong with a more aggressive movement down lane. Asymmetric balls are great for heavy amounts of oil or longer patterns which don't provide a lot of friction, while symmetrical balls are typically smoother and yield a benchmark type of reaction that are more controllable. Symmetricals have two principal moments of inertia, x and y axes, and asymmetricals have three, x, y, and z. This greater degree of asymmetry is responsible for the highly dynamic moves asymmetrical balls can create. So I absolutely agree that that asymmetric balls have three axes and symmetric have two. That makes perfect sense because there's an added piece of the core that throws it off and adds that z variable into asymmetrical cores. But here's where I disagree based on what the data has shown and based on my life experience in bowling, and the whole reason I wanted to do this test was to just kind of show some results. So I disagree that asymmetric balls, it says in the second sentence, that asymmetric balls rev up fast and finish strong with a more aggressive movement down lane. I completely disagree that that the finish at the end of the pattern is more aggressive, that the movement is more aggressive, simply because, we saw it time and time again in the video that the reality was finishing forward, going in a forward direction off the pattern, whereas the idle cosmos was not smoother. And it says here that symmetrical balls are typically smoother and yield a benchmark type of reaction that are more controllable. Well, the idle Cosmos was making a more aggressive movement down lane and creating a little more of that snap down lane, as some bowlers would describe it, and that allowed it to go through the pins a lot better on really both patterns. Although we did have the outlier of one shot, but I was not able to recreate the effects of that shot. So, I struggle to understand exactly where that reasoning is coming from Storm. Now, I want to show also what another manufacturer has to say. This is Motive on Motive's website, and it says symmetrical balls. I'm just going to read the bullet points. Produce a smoother and more predictable motion when encountering friction, typically better for rev-dominant players, and with the new rule changes, CG placement will not matter for performance. Asymmetrical balls produce a more pronounced and sharper motion when encountering friction, typically better for speed-dominant players, and the added variable of intermediate differential allows for more layout possibilities. So the third bullet point of each one, I completely agree with. CG placement doesn't matter, and the intermediate differential on asymmetric balls absolutely allows for more layout possibilities because that's an added variable. But the first point is where I really completely disagree. And you can see it in the video where the smoother motion was coming from the reality, the asymmetric ball, whereas the less smooth motion, the sharper motion, as Motive describes that motion, the sharper motion was coming from the symmetric ball, which was the idle Cosmos. And this is where I struggle to see where they're coming from, and would like to see more of an updated study done on a more professional level by the manufacturers, just to kind of show the true differences where this data is coming from that they present on their websites, because I struggle to truly understand it, because all of my experience in bowling, all of my experience in working in a pro shop for 7 years, and all of my data that I've shown in this video shows that the asymmetric ball was consistently rolling at least 1 foot sooner than the symmetric. Even with surface changes, it was still consistently 1 foot sooner. And then it was also smoother on the back end. Just visually, you can easily see that in the video. You can see that the reality was going forward off the end of the pattern, and the idle Cosmos was hooking and creating more of a defined motion on the back end. And so with that, I would just like to see a more professional study done on perhaps even a larger scale by the manufacturers when they're able to, because I think that this is something that pro shop operators have a very important need for understanding these products, so that we can continue to sell them to the right customer, put the right ball in the right customer's hands, and then they'll be happier, and we'll keep them coming back and grow our business. And so it's very important to understand exactly what's going on with different bowling balls, what the intentions are behind them, which I do appreciate that most manufacturers are extremely clear on their intentions with certain bowling balls whenever they release a new bowling ball. But the biggest key is understanding the difference in the types of bowling balls and the type of bowling ball motion that can be created by each one, whether it be asymmetrical or symmetric with the core inside of the bowling ball. So the last thing that I'll point out, just to kind of back myself up with a clear explanation of some data points here. So from Specto, this is on Taj Mahal. I threw a shot with the reality that hit 10.9 at the arrows. I've just highlighted it there, and 3.8 down lane is where it exited the pattern. The break point at 40 feet was 3.6. And as you see here, I want to highlight something. So the entry board, where it entered the pocket at, or hit the pins at basically, was 15.4, okay? The very next shot I threw with the idle Cosmos, shot number 18 here. It hit the 11 board exactly at the arrows, and it hit 5.4 at the pattern exit. So yes, there is a bit of variance there, but I am human, so you have to accept that. I got these two shots pretty dang close. 5.4 and 3.8 is just over, a board and a half difference. An inch and a half difference, 40 feet down the lane is not much. For a human at least. Maybe if I was a robot, it'd be different. But anyways, so breakpoint board. So this one was at 41 feet. So the Idle Cosmos did go 1 foot longer on this shot. It was 5.1 board at 41 feet. So still just about a board and a half difference. And but one thing I want to highlight is it was 17.1 here when it came into the pocket. We can look at where the ball is entering the pocket or where it's hitting the pins at. But honestly, if you want to talk about a sharper, more defined or pronounced motion, then it's going to have to be something, like that right there. Here's two very similar shots still. Arrows 8.0 and 7.8, they were both 4.1 when they exited the pattern, 4.1 and 4.0 at the break point, both 36 feet. Right here, I remember this shot. It's highlighted in the video. I said they both exited the pattern, or sorry, the breakpoint distance was both at 36 feet. And but look at this. I mean, 18.2. This would have been the reality because I would have thrown it first. So the reality would have been 18.2. The Idle Cosmos, the exact same shot, is still 18.9, which is just a pinch higher in the pocket, which means it's making more down lane motion. If you just kind of think about it, it's making a more pronounced down lane motion and going 0.7 more boards, more of a board into the pocket, higher basically in the pocket, which means that it's making a more pronounced and more of a motion down lane than the reality. So that's symmetric, once again making more pronounced motion down lane versus the asymmetric not making the more pronounced motion. So that's where I'm coming from. But I want to say thank you guys. Just, I try to back this up with data. I'm not trying to attack anyone. That's my last intention. My only intention with this is to perform a test, to show the data, and to explain to you guys what's going on in the bowling world, just to kind of give us something to learn about and learn on so that we can continue to get better, not only in bowling but in life as well. Just kind of analyzing data and learning about it more. So guys, be sure to support your local pro shop or, come on down to Bowlerama Lanes and see us at Bowlers Connection Pro Shop. I'd love to say hi, shake your hand, and meet you if I never have before. So guys, thank you. Subscribe below for part 2. It's coming in the next couple of days, and I appreciate you guys. Have a great day.
Any other stars.